Hey everybody, welcome to Crazy Tech Lab, and we have a brand new case from NZXT today. It is the H5 Flow RGB, and there is also a non-RGB version that's available for a little bit less. And you might have noticed that NZXT is revamping a couple of the older cases, specifically the H5 and the H7, to basically revamp their cooling and the design and offer a more modern case. So the one that we're looking at today is a revamp of the original H5, and it is called the H5 Flow RGB, and this is the 2024 version. If you're landing on this YouTube review in a year or two's time and you're not sure which version is which, this is the new version for 2024. So in terms of pricing, we've got the pricing here. We've got the H5 Flow RGB, which is this version, for 150 bucks or 110 pounds here in the UK. The standard version, just the H5 Flow, is 130 bucks, so 20 bucks cheaper, and 90 pounds here in the UK as well. So available in black and white. Obviously the white version that we've got here, probably the one that I would go for because it just looks absolutely insane with the RGB lighting. And also NZXT finally has a white power supplies. So we've got the C1000 Gold here, and great to see that they're doing that, because the cases, some of the white cases that the NZXT makes at the moment, look absolutely fantastic. So the H6 Flow, for example, one of my favorite cases out there right now, but obviously you wouldn't be able to go with NZXT if you wanted to pair a white power supply with it. You can now. And of course, like we had with the H7 Flow, we've got one of these jobs inside the case, which is the NZXT F-Series RGB core. So we've got a 360mm version of the RGB core in here, but you can buy smaller versions to kit out the case fully as well, such as the F240 that we've got here as well. So the F360 is already mounted in the front of the case with its RGB lighting. Fan frame basically just kind of sits there with the fans all attached to each other in a single frame, so you've only got 4 screws to deal with instead of 12. Super easy to install into your case, and even easier to install in radiators as well. So this case supporting large radiators out of the box, and it is pretty compact as well. I have to say, I was kind of looking at it earlier and I thought, ooh, do I fancy upgrading from my Mini ITX rig? But yeah, nah, I'm waiting for NZXT to bring out a new Mini ITX case. And if you want to check out my interview with one of the top bods at NZXT, you can see my interview with Scott from NZXT in the banner up above, or the description down below, where we check out all the latest stuff post Computex, and also we have a good chat about his favorite case, which is Mini ITX, and their plans for other Mini ITX cases in the future, as well as a whole load of other stuff from NZXT as well. So don't forget to check out that video. So the H5 Flow RGB that we're looking at today, we're going to be doing a full review. So we're going to be looking at all the features, close up, hands-on, and then we are going to be moving on to some thermal testing to see how it performs with some modern hardware, and coming to some conclusions at the end. And don't forget that you can buy all the hardware plus others in the description down below. They are buy links, and I just get a little bit of a kickback from you buying products via those links. Just helps keep me running this channel. And other ways that you can help keep me running this channel are by sending your thanks by buying me a coffee down below, or sending thanks in the drop down bar on the main bar just below this video. And of course, even more importantly, is to like and subscribe to my channel. So like this video and subscribe and turn on notifications. Just all helps punch me through the algorithm and gets me noticed, as does commenting on this video as well. Really important. Love hearing your thoughts on the products that I look at, including the NZXT H5 Flow RGB that we're looking at today. So that is pretty much it. Thanks to NZXT for sending over all the goodies, and great news about the white power supplies. So that's going to make things a lot easier when you're color matching now. So you can go all NZXT for your setup. And yeah, let's crack on with the review. Okay, so here we are with the NZXT H5 Flow RGB then, and what we're going to do is just have a quick walk around of the case, see how it works, have a look at the interior, and then we're going to try and play with a few extra components, such as the fan frames that NZXT offers now, and we also have a couple of liquid coolers to see what you can actually fit inside of this case in terms of liquid cooling. And then we also have some radiators as well that we're going to try and fit inside the case and see what actually can fit where. So starting off with the case itself, and it looks pretty neat. It's fairly compact as well. I mean, obviously it's not Mini ITX or even Micro ATX. You can fit ATX cases in here, but it is one of the smaller ATX cases on the market, and it is nicely compact. It's a nice shape, and you also have the angled underside here, which is kind of a trademark of the new 2024 flow cases from NZXT. So we saw the same with the H7. In fact, that had even more of a kind of extreme design down here. So you had basically had just two ledges down here that raised the case, and then you had this angled section here. But the important thing to realize is that the power supply kind of sits here. So this whole section basically adds airflow to the lower chamber, and of course a lot of that is going to be allowed to pass through to where your graphics card sits, which will be down about here. And of course you've got that big area of mesh in the bottom of the case. So we're going to look at more of that in some more detail in a second. So as standard, not a massive front panel here, it has to be said. I would have maybe liked to have seen two USB type A ports. Type C, yeah, that's probably useful for charging your phone and that kind of stuff, but you know, we all want to plug in USB ports, USB sticks, flash drives, headsets and all that kind of stuff. I would have maybe liked to have seen an extra port up there, but it does look super clean as a result. You also get an audio jack, and that's where the power button is located as well. So that means that the front of the case is completely clear of ports and that kind of thing. So opening the side panel, all tool free pretty much here. So we've got a thumb screw on the back that holds the roof section in place that we're going to look at in just a moment. And here we can just pop off the side panel like so. And unlike a couple of cases that we've seen recently, there doesn't seem to be any issue with this rattling. Now, I know a lot of you out there don't like the tool-free panels because they are generally a bit looser than screwing things together, just because of the way they're designed. But here I can't kind of feel any rattle there at all. So I'm hoping that will translate into zero rattles when the PC is built. So the roof, if we look up here, just popping off the thumb screw, pulling the panel backwards, and then that just comes off like so. So really easy for cleaning. There's no separate dust filter, but that's what this is for. And that's basically the same all the way around the case. You don't have separate dust filters. The mesh acts as its own dust filter. So you're going to need to make sure that you watch the outside of your case to remove any dust that kind of builds up on here, which it certainly will. So that bottom section isn't removable, so that's possibly a bit of an issue when it comes to cleaning out the dust, because I mean this is going to be a prime area for dust ingress, or would be if the mesh wasn't there. So just going to have to make sure that this area is nice and clean, and hopefully there won't be anything on the inside to clear, because that will be pretty tricky to get to, and you'll probably have to dismantle your PC. So we'll take the side panel off for now as well and just lay that down over there. And then here we've got a nearly naked H5 Flow RGB, and we're going to pop the front panel off now. Super easy doing that. So if you just want to whip it off and then give this section a hoover or something like that, it's very easy to do. So here we have the FL360 360mm fan frame already installed, and as you can see, we can fit 280mm radiators in here, as well as 140mm fans, of course. But the fan frame, I do kind of like it because it's just super easy to move around and install and that kind of stuff. Arguably, it's kind of a bit wasted here because it's already installed. You're not really saving any time, money or effort doing that. But I guess it's just a way of NZXT showcasing its new products. And something I would really like to see is these fan frames with its liquid coolers, because this is actually a standard Kraken Elite liquid cooler and 360mm version, and here I've actually fitted the FL360 fan frame to it, and that looks pretty good, doesn't it? And it took 5 seconds to install it because you've just got 4 screws and a single cable coming out here for everything else. So I think NZXT should definitely be doing that with its coolers at some point. So let's have a look and see what else we've got here. So if we flip around and have a look at the far panel, we can just undo that really easily. No tools required to remove any of these panels. And we'll have a quick look inside. So the rear 120mm fan is only 3 pins, so you'll need to make sure that that's controlled properly in your BIOS. It probably will be as standard, but maybe if you've got an older motherboard or something, it might not detect it properly. And if you hook it up, it might just run at full speed, or in worst case scenario, if you've already been fiddling, it might not run at all if you've set that to PWM or something like that. So a reasonable amount of clearance between the motherboard tray and the side of the case, so you shouldn't have too many problems here with cable routing. And obviously we've got this cable cover down here as well to hide the cables as you bend them round. There's quite a few cable anchors here as well, Velcro cable anchors, so they're going to be pretty useful for tidying up your cases. And there's actually one over there as well, which I like, because that's usually where I route the 8-pin CPU connector up around there as well. So everything else that we've got is pretty much included here. And then for the fan frame, we have a single fan head, single fan cable there, fan connector. So that's again a 3-pin. And if you have the RGB core hub from NZXT, you can use that with the RGB lighting, but the fan basically splits off from that the single connector on the FL360 fan frame and just turns into a 3-pin connector there. So for the 3 fans, you've just got a single RGB connector and a single 3-pin fan connector to deal with. So RGB as well, if you don't want to use the an NZXT hub, you've just got a standard 3-pin RGB connector down there. So very, very easy to hook up and install, just single connectors for the 3 front fans, or equivalent of 3 front fans. And something I should also add going around here is one place you might want to add some fans is down in this mesh here. Now, at first glance, I was like, oh, has NZXT made a mistake here? Because these are not normal fan screws. So what NZXT has actually done is just use, it's basically assumed that you're probably going to be installing fans either blowing down or blowing up or something like that, but you won't be able to use the standard screws, standard fan screws very easily in this mount here. So if you wanted to add a FL240, for example, like this, the 240mm fan frame, what you can actually do is just kind of send it down like that. And obviously you would probably want to have it this way up, and it has included screws to secure from this side, basically like you would to a radiator. So I think they're like 632 or M3 screws or something, much thinner than standard fan screws, and that is pretty much what you are looking at. And not entirely sure what the extra fan screws on the end here are, because they don't seem to kind of line up with anything there. We've got the standard mounts there, or I suppose you could probably fit a single fan or something like that here, but obviously NZXT also concerned with a 240mm mount, so you've just got those 2 there, or as I mentioned, you can actually install just a single fan there just pointing at your graphics card. And that is what this mount down here is primarily for. It's just to shove air into your graphics card. Now obviously if your graphics card is going to be mounted in here, it's only going to come to about here. So I guess if I was NZXT, I might have wanted to move this this fan vent a little bit further over. We saw this with the H5 as well, and I think that's why the installing fans here didn't really add that much to the GPU cooling, but we'll see what it's like in this case later on. So in terms of liquid cooler support, we've obviously got 360mm compatibility in the front, of course. And if you want to go custom liquid cooling, you can do that as well. So there is just about enough room. Yeah, I think that will go in there, but obviously, like it is at the moment, you'll need to remove the RGB fan core. Actually, what the heck? Let's do that right now, and we can actually see what we can get in here. Now, I am using an electronic screwdriver, but I have a torque on it set to the lowest setting, so I wouldn't want to use this anywhere else on my PC, and I just use it for removing stuff. So as you can see there, I've just got it on a very low torque setting. So that's why I'm doing that. And obviously you don't want to be using an electronic screwdriver on your motherboard or anything like that. But for case fans and just putting these kind of removing this kind of stuff for a video, I just wanted to use it very, very quickly. So we're just going to move the RGB core inside the case, because it is kind of all cable tied up for now. And we're just going to see what we can get in here in terms of radiators. So here we have an XSPC Coolstream PE. So it's a slightly thicker radiator than normal. The SE I think is slightly larger. And I'm just going to see if I can even get this in here. It's not looking that promising at the moment. Yeah, there we go. So you can fit one of those in there, and I'm assuming you can actually fit fans down there as well. It's going to be very, very tight. Yeah, you can. So you don't even have to opt for a slim radiator here, or one of the really slim versions. We've actually got an EK Coolstream PE radiator in here, which is slightly thicker, about a 45mm thick, I think. So that's really good news. Now, I also want to try a 280mm radiator because they're pretty cool as well. So if you have one of those lying around and you want to install one of those, that's really easy. And I don't have a 140mm fan to hand, but obviously you can do that. So that's just an XSPC model. So we have plenty of space in here for multiple different radiator sizes and thicknesses. And that obviously means that we have room for all-in-one liquid coolers as well. So here we have the NZXT Kraken Elite 360 RGB. So you can see a link to this one down in the description down below as well. And we're just going to slot that one straight in down there, and it goes in. No problem at all. And obviously here I've got the fans exhausting. You might want to have them drawing air into the case, or even have the fans on the front of the radiator pushing through. But as you can see, no problem at all in fitting. And then obviously you just install the water block and the pump section just over there. So that looks pretty cool. And obviously I get asked this a lot in my other videos. There is another very, very popular cooler on the market, the Arctic, which we are going to fit right now. So this is the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3, I believe, and this one obviously quite popular because it has the thicker radiator, but we have already seen that we can actually fit something like this in here because we saw it with the EK radiator. So we're just going to see if we can actually just slide this in and see what happens. It is going to be a little bit of a fiddle because we have the screws already mounted onto the radiators here. So just trying to see what's actually going on. So it's not looking promising here, I have to say. So obviously we're dealing with the screws already mounted to the radiator. I stand corrected. So a bit of a fiddle, but it does fit. So if you want to fit this monster all-in-one liquid cooler, you can do it. So obviously looking amazing in this case with white as well. Obviously I would usually stick to NZXT products in an NZXT video, but I know that this this cooler is particularly popular. So that is why I wanted to do that. And you're not going to see any of the influencers doing with this, which is why you should subscribe to my channel, because they're just concerned with sticking to the NZXT products, but we're actually concerned with proper PC hardware here on Crazy Tech Labs. So awesome news that pretty much everything fits here. Now, something I wanted to have a look at is what you can actually fit in the roof, because you might want to just stick with the RGB fans in the front. Obviously you get a great view of those through the mesh view, the mesh panel as well. In the roof, we have a fair amount of space for radiators as well. Now, a lot is going to depend on your motherboard and the cooling that you've got up there. Now, I'm going to go for the NZXT cooler in the roof of the case here, and just going to see if this will actually fit at all. And yeah, I mean, it does look like it, and you can actually offset it away from your motherboard. The downside, I think, is that I'm actually going to pop the fan frame back in, because NZXT says you can't fit a 360mm radiator in the roof. So I am going to see why it's actually saying that, because I suspect it might be because the fan core, the FL fan frame is getting in the way, which I think it might be. So it's a little bit of a squeeze. Just going to see if we can sort of install one and then install the other kind of thing. Why is this not going in? It went in fine a minute ago. Wiggle, wiggle. I think we're a little bit stuck here. Let's come out and reposition. So how the heck did I get this thing in the first place? I think what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to get it in like that, and then raise the fan frame up. So specific order of things, but yeah, I mean that seems to work. We do have a bit of a conflict up here with the tube pipes. So yeah, that's probably why NZXT says out of the box that you can't fit a 360mm radiator in here. But you pretty much can, but you have to lose either the rear fan here in order to slide this liquid cooler back away from the the fan frame in the front because those tubes are conflicting down here, as you can see. But it's still pretty good. Like you could still fit that fan frame in. You just need to remove the rear fan, and that way you can have a 360mm radiator in the roof as well. So now obviously a lot is going to depend on your motherboard, but as we can see here, we've offset the cooler out to the far side of the case, and there looks like there's loads of room for your motherboard in there. So obviously we'll give that a bit of a check over once we've installed our hardware later on. But it does look like a 360mm radiator in the roof is possible. And if you wanted to go all out, of course, you could fit a smaller radiator. Let me just get rid of these things first and then we can start talking again. So you could fit, so assuming we've got our 360mm radiator in the roof, you could even install a 240mm radiator down here. And if we have the fan frame on it, obviously you're going to be a bit stuck for space with your graphics card. You've probably got enough for just about 2 slots there maybe. But obviously if you're adding radiators, your graphics card is probably water cooled as well. But you could potentially have 3 radiators inside this case. So you could have one here, maybe drop down to a slim down here if you're air cooled, if your graphics card is air cooled. But you could probably just drop down to a slim radiator anyway, just to look a bit better. Have another radiator up here and another one in the front. So you could actually fit 3 radiators in here with not too much problem. So let's remove all of this. And obviously there is another thing we should talk about, which is where you actually mount your graphics card. There is no space for a vertical mount in here, or there isn't one included as standard. Obviously you could do something out of the box if you wanted to, but as standard there isn't anything here. So I'm just going to see, I mean there is a mount in here. I might have to look at this in the instructions later on to see what NZXT is doing, and we can talk about that in the conclusion a little bit later. So for now, doesn't look like there's a vertical graphics card mount, but that might change once I've had a deeper look at the instructions and to see what this hole is actually for down here. So that's it for the walk around. Let's crack on with the thermal testing. Our thermal testing hardware includes a Be Quiet cooler strapped to a stock speed Core i5 12600K, and we also have an AMD Radeon 7900 XT with its fans locked at 50% speed so it doesn't spin up or down and gives us consistent results. We use Cinebench to get a CPU temperature, which is the average temperature across all of the P cores on the Core i5 12600K, and we run a looped Metro Exodus benchmark to get the graphics card temperature. Starting off with the CPU temperature now then, and we have a couple of results for this case because we've added in 2 fans, or the FL240 fan frame, to both the roof and the base. So the front is already equipped with 3 120mm fans by way of the FL360 fan frame, and we also have a 120mm fan in the rear. So the case is already pretty well equipped out of the box. So out of the box, we have a temperature of 74 degrees C, which is pretty standard. It's the same CPU temperature that we got with the NZXT H7, this case's larger sibling. And the only cases that did noticeably better were the NZXT H6. And also the Be Quiet with Darkbase Pro 901 with the mesh front panel that it comes with as well. And obviously, if you add in a few extra fans to the H7 Flow, it dropped the CPU temperature by a degree. Now, adding fans to the NZXT H5 is probably less likely for you to do because this is a cheaper case. So if you're going to be spending, 50% more as the case on fans, I'd say that's probably unlikely unless you're really gunning for that aesthetic look with some more RGB fans spread around. So if you add fans to the roof, you're not really going to see any improvement. We didn't see any improvement here to the CPU temperature. And if you add them to the base, well, we actually saw a 1 degree rise in the CPU temperature, and that's probably because the fans are kind of interfering with that front to back airflow. So just worth bearing in mind that adding a load of fans, it might look pretty in those influencer videos, but it's not actually doing anything. In fact, you're just wasting money doing that if you're trying to boost your cooling. So let's have a look at the CPU temperatures. And here we can see that there are quite a few differences in the graphs depending on where the NZXT H5 is configured and where it sits. So out of the box, obviously the worst result is 65 degrees C. And interestingly, the NZXT H5 Flow RGB, the larger version of this case, managed a slightly lower temperature, dropping it from 65 to 63. And also the NZXT H6 actually performing slightly worse here than the NZXT H5. So a reasonable result out of the box, but obviously we can see that it's sitting at the top of the graph as well. And that's when we added the FL240 fan frame with its 220mm fans to the base pointing directly at the graphics card. And that had a profound impact. It dropped the graphics card temperature by 6 degrees, which is very, very significant. So unlike the adding those fans to the roof, adding them to below the GPU does really help your GPU cooling. Adding fans to the roof didn't really help things as far as the GPU goes. We saw a 1 degree lower temperature there, but by far and away, if you're looking for, if you've maybe got a little bit of extra money to add to your setup and you want to boost your graphics card's cooling, absolutely consider dropping 2 fans to the to below the GPU in those fan mounts. So can definitely recommend that. And what I would suggest is probably ditching the roof fan idea entirely and just going with the base fans instead. And obviously the front of the case and the rear are already occupied out of the box. So here we are with the finished PC then, with some liquid cooling installed, and just wanted to run through a few things that I love and that I don't like so much about the NZXT H5 Flow RGB. So starting off with the things that I really like, I do actually like the tool-free design. Just makes building your case a whole lot easier because all the panels are removable, you don't need any screws, and that just makes your life a little bit easier. I also love the fact that this case is very water cooling friendly. You've got lots of space in the front panel here, down in the front section for large radiators to be installed in the front. You can also fit a 240mm radiator in the base, and there are also room for radiators in the roof as well. So I really love this case as a compact water cooling option. Now, for the price, I don't think you'll get many better looking cases. I think the H5 Flow RGB looks fantastic from pretty much every angle, and I especially like the indentation that we've got down here. Just sets it apart from the other cases on the market. Now for a few things that I'm not so keen on with the case. I would have liked to have seen a proper radiator support in the roof, because at the moment, while it looks like you can fit 3 120mm fans up here, the problem is that you won't be able to secure all the mounting screws. And a great example of this is actually using NZXT's own triple 120mm fan frame, the F360. And if you try and mount that in the roof, you can see here that the fan mounts don't go far enough to actually secure that last screw. So a real shame here, because I would have loved to have seen this case with 2 of these things. And you can actually fit one there and the one in the front section as well. You can do that. So it's a bit of a shame that out of the box and the H5 Flow RGB isn't compatible with NZXT's own fan frame. And of course, you'll be missing some screws if you try and mount radiators up here as well. The other thing I'm not too sure about are the fan mounts down here. Now, as we saw in the cooling, they do provide a significant benefit to your graphics card, but I'm just not sure about the looks of them down here. Even though we do have a massive triple slot graphics card in here, there's still plenty of room, so it's not really going to impact the clearance here with your graphics card, but there is space underneath here for the fans to maybe have been recessed like they were with the H7 that we saw recently. So that is definitely something I would like to have seen, just some kind of recess for these fans, just so they kind of sit a little bit more aesthetically pleasing in the case. So the last thing I'm going to mention about the H5 Flow RGB that I'm not too keen on is the lack of USB ports on the front panels. So I would have liked to have seen at least 2 Type A ports here as well as the Type C port. I regularly use these ports for USB flash drives and headsets, joysticks and those kind of things. Stuff that I don't always have connected to my PC most of the time. So it's just helpful to have as many ports up here as possible. Obviously I'm not looking for 10 or anything silly like that, but 2 would have been a bit better than 1. So what do we make of the NZXT H5 Flow RGB then? Well, I think this case is pretty well rounded for the money. And in terms of money, if you missed the part earlier where I spoke about the pricing, we're looking at about $150 for the RGB version that we've got here and around $130 for the non-RGB version. And if you're my side of the pond in the UK, you're looking at around £110 for the RGB version and £90 for the non-RGB version. So in terms of which one you should go for, well, it depends whether you want the RGB lighting. Depends whether you have some RGB fans laying around as well that you might want to install, or just pick up some NZXT core fans or something like that. You can see a link to all the gear that we've got here down in the description below. But the fan frame is kind of wasted on a case, I think, and I agree with a lot of you that mentioned that in the H7 review as well, because the fan frame is designed to get rid of all the extra screws and cables that you have with 3 separate fans and just have one fan frame that needs 4 screws and just 1 or 2 cables. So obviously if it's built into your PC already, I don't really care if it's 3 separate fans or a fan frame. I mean, it might make your life a little bit easier if it's a fan frame. But the problem here is that you don't even have the excuse, oh, well, you know, I want to fit an all-in-one liquid cooler in the front, I'll just move the fan frame somewhere else. You can't do that in the H5 Flow because the fan mount in the roof doesn't have all the screw mounts, or at least the screw mounts don't extend out far enough to mount either a fan frame, a 360mm fan frame like the F360, or a 360mm radiator. A 360 radiator you would be able to fit because you can just use the rest of the screws. It should still be perfectly secure like that. But it's just a shame with the H5 Flow that they didn't extend those screws out far enough, as I mentioned in the likes and dislikes. But other than that, there isn't really anything to dislike majorly about this case. And the only thing I would say is, as I mentioned in the cooling section, is if you are going to add fans to it, I wouldn't bother adding anything in the roof because there's just there's not really any point. You don't gain CPU cooling or GPU cooling. And the only place I would put the fans are in the bottom of the case, so they're directed towards your GPU, because that can and definitely does improve GPU cooling, as we saw in the thermal results. So overall, I think it's a great looking case. It's good for air cooling or AIOs or custom liquid cooling as well, which is pretty impressive for a case of this size. I think it looks really good as well, and thankfully the tool-free design doesn't seem to add in any rattling like we've seen with a couple of other cases recently. So overall, I think it's a great case from NZXT, and even better now is if you want to go all in NZXT with your build, they even have white power supplies to go with as well. So we've got the C1000 here as well that has the 16-pin native connector for NVIDIA RTX 4000 series cards as well. So obviously you get the motherboards as well. We've got the N7 Z790 motherboard here from NZXT, which looks absolutely fantastic and goes great in this case. If you're going for a white motherboard, I think they're one of the best that you can get because there's plenty of white going on there. So that's it from me today. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and turn on notifications if you do subscribe. And liking and commenting just really helps me as a channel because it helps punch through the algorithm and gets me noticed. And if you want to show your thanks, you can also buy me a coffee in the link in the description down below, or send your thanks using the little drop down menu in the main menu bar below the video. And that's it. I'd like to thank NZXT for sending over all these goodies, and we'll be back very, very soon with more great videos. So don't forget those links, and we'll be back very soon.